Welcome to the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, and hiker trash. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute, help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, let's get to this week's guest, a triple crowner, ultra runner, and fitness coach. Welcome to the John Freakin' Muir Pod, Sarah Dramis. How's it going, Sarah?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat today.
Same here. Did I did not ask you in the pre-interview talk here about the pronunciation of your last name. Did I get it right or did I mispronounce it?
It's Dramis. You got it right.
Dramis. All right. Very good. We're off to a great start. And I'd like to point out, if you're not watching on YouTube, if you're just listening, that tonight is a first. Tonight we have both the host and the guest both in hats. Now, this is the first time I've recorded in a hat. So I got a nice surprise in the mail yesterday when a package arrived, and I got my hiker trash hat from the Instagram account outinthewild.life, and its creator and host Matador. He saw my interview with IB Tat, and we made comments on IB Tat's hat, which was this hiker trash hat. And Matador reached out to me and said, "Hey, I got to send you a hat." And he sent it to me free of charge. So I'm excited to be wearing this. It puts me a little bit closer to IB Tat's stature. I'm not even close in terms of through hiking miles or level of badassery, but this gets me just a little bit closer to IB Tat. I'm really excited about this hat.
Jealous. I like that.
Sarah, what hat are you wearing?
I'm just wearing a good old-fashioned Nike hat. I'm pretty sweaty all the time, so a hat is just a nice way to pretend that I'm presentable.
And you also have a jacket on. It looks like you're broadcasting from a very cold location.
I'm preparing for my life of living in the mountains. That's what I'm trying to do.
You're calling in from Colorado right now.
Yes. It's pretty cold. We just had some snow this morning.
You said it was 18 degrees in Colorado right now.
Yeah, still getting used to it.
And do you have the heat turned on?
I mean, no, I'm just trying to really acclimate. I'm originally from Florida and have lived in warm temps, so this is only my second winter. I'm trying to become braver than I think I am.
They didn't have winters down in Florida?
No, not in Hawaii either.
All right. Hey, Sarah, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
A couple times.
Okay. So you are familiar with the format. I want to make sure that you're aware of a segment towards the end called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. And that's where I will turn to you and ask you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right.
The Must Bring Gear Review.
Hey, Sarah, another feature we've been doing this season is the Must Bring Gear Review, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. And here's how it works. If you were to let a stranger pack your bag with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day or a multi-month hike, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you've got a particular brand for that specific piece of gear, even better. So, Sarah, what is your must-bring piece of gear out there?
I'm going to go with the long handle Sea to Summit spoon, titanium spoon. I was a small handle girl for a long time. And once I committed to that long handle spoon, you can really get deep into those gallons of Ziploc bags to eat your food. And it makes a world of difference. And plus, when it's longer, you can't lose it as easily because, in my experience, I have been forced to eat my dinner with a tent stake before. So long handle spoon club all the way.
Nice. Unless you are really ultralight, then you can just use that dual purpose tent stake as your spoon. So possibility. But the long handled spoon, it keeps the food off of your knuckles.
Yes, and I mean I don't like smelling like food when I'm sleeping by myself in my tent out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, with possible, bears roaming around. That's a good
Very
tip.
possible.
Nice. Sarah, I neglected to ask you earlier. Have you picked up a trail name? You're a triple crowner. You have to have a trail name, right?
I do, and thinking back on it in 2015 when I was on my first through hike, um, I was trail named Hawaii because at the time I was living in Hawaii. I was there for about 10 years, and I always talked about it. So it is not a very epic story. I wish I would have passed that one on and held for a better epic story, but it just stuck. So I am Hawaii, and it's never going to change.
Oh, the way you led into that story, it sounded like my first trail name was Hawaii, but now I've got something else. But it's still Hawaii.
It's still Hawaii. I mean, there's many other occasions and instances where I could have been retrail named, but I decided to be OG and stick with the original one.
Okay, and let's talk about Hawaii for a little bit. You were there for 10 years. How'd you end up in Hawaii, and why on earth did you ever leave?
That's always the number one question. I was actually born and raised in Florida till I was 18. Got married very young, which brought me to Hawaii. And after I got divorced, decided to stay. And surprisingly enough, but not surprisingly, the mountains in Hawaii actually were my first encounter with mountains and trail systems. And I decided to stay. Ended up getting my education and going on to start my career there in the Hawaiian Islands. And it became quite a fascination. But after some time of through hiking over the years, I realized I wanted to live in bigger mountains. So ended up making my way back to the mainland, California, and now Colorado, and I'm not leaving.
Okay, now did your then husband, was he from Hawaii? Did he work in Hawaii?
No, military orders. Military orders.
Military, got it.
Military orders. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hey, let's talk a little bit more about gear. I'm interested to hear about how, especially triple crowners, what their gear looks like, how it evolves from their first long trail to their last long trail. And to help us talk about gear, we have
It's the hiking pole.
the hiking pole, and that's POLL, like a survey, not POLE, like the thing you carry in your hand. And this is a 7-question survey that's going to help me determine, it's going to help us talk about gear, but it's also going to help me determine your level of sanity. I'm going to give you a score when we're done here between 1 and 100. All right. With 1 being completely insane and 100 being completely sane. And I'll give you a hint. I can already tell you're not completely sane because if you've done a long trail, if you've done one of the 3 American long trails, it's an automatic 25-point deduction. So your highest score is 75.
Let's go.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll start off slow. First question, hiking poles or no hiking poles?
Absolutely. 100% yes.
And why is
I use
that?
them for my tent.
Oh, okay. Well, that's important.
I use them for my tent, but I go up mountains and down mountains 10 times faster, having that mental trust.
Mm-hmm. And our listeners out there, just a reminder, this is a triple crowner. So when she says hiking poles are a must, I would take that advice. What do you say to the people out there who are like, I'm tough enough. I don't need trekking poles.
Good for you. I mean, I wish I didn't need them, but I like not having to carry a tent that has like a pre-framed tent. I like just being able to adjust them at the end of the day, so it saves me some weight. I also like poles for crossing water sources, especially when there's a fast-moving river. So if you don't need them, props to you. I just rather prefer the safety.
Yeah, they are multifunction. Definitely a big positive boost out there on the trail. All right, question number 2. What's on your feet, boots or trail runners?
100% trail runners. I don't recommend boots. Again, if that's your thing, go with it. I have hiked all my trails in trail runners, and I've never had a blister or an injury. So I swear by light shoes on your feet that help you move faster and don't take any time to dry out.
Hey, Hawaii, you know what I'm noticing here is that you do not waffle. You are 100% one way or the other. I mean, the first 2 answers here, 100% with the first words out of your mouth. So there you go.
I know what I like.
Yes. Do you have a favorite brand of trail runners?
I am a ultra lone peaker. I started out both trails. I started out the PCT and New Balance Leadvilles, and they discontinued them. Moved on to Sauconys, discontinued the ones I was wearing. And for the AT and then the CDT, moved into the Lone Peak Ultras. And I just get 500 to 600 miles out of them. And having that wide toe box for my toes to spread out really has helped my feet just kind of create their own rhythm on trail more so. And now I use them as an ultra runner. No complaints, and they hold up pretty well.
Okay. Now, when you first started out hiking, when your first experiences out there, did you feel the need that, I'm hiking, I need to do a boot, or were you always trail runner?
I've actually never worn boots before, to be honest with you. Growing up in Florida and then Hawaii, training for my first through hike on the PCT, I was either barefoot in Hawaii or wearing those Vibram 5-finger. Do you remember those toe shoes?
Yes.
So I was wearing those, but when I got closer to actually leaving for the PCT, I realized it was time to give my feet a little bit more support, and then had started trading in trail runners. So I didn't have that background in boots that some people maybe comparatively do. So it wasn't a big shift for me. It was like, oh, I got to tie my shoes now, not just put on flip-flops or such.
Mm-hmm. Hey, anybody out there on the long trails doing it barefoot or using toe shoes?
I saw a few people over the years with the Vibrams. And the year I did the AT in 2017, there was a girl who, maybe there was two girls together that I want to say did the entire thing barefoot, which props to them.
I don't know how you do that. I mean, that you gotta have some tough feet. Your bottom of your foot has to have some serious calluses. I think I've seen on Instagram I think she's European. She might be English. Is it Anna McNuff? Does that sound familiar? Okay. She always seems to be barefoot out there. So maybe I'm wrong.
Braver than I.
Okay. All right. Question number 3. When it comes to shelters, what is your preference? Are you tent, tarp, hammock, bivy, or hey, let's just cowboy camp?
So I'm definitely a tenter. I've done all my through hikes in a single wall tent. I had a Yama Mountain Gear single wall tent from the first trail, and then moved on, used it for the second, and then the Z-Packs duplex. Most intimidating when I first started through hiking on the PCT was cowboy camping. I was terrified of snakes, and I was like, it's just gonna crawl in when I'm sleeping and attack me. Lo and behold, it doesn't work like that. And on the PCT, I actually cowboy camped more than I slept in my tent, which the PCT, out of all the trails, is most conducive to that, and definitely made me fall in love with cowboy camping. That being said, on the AT, I cowboy camped like 3 times just because of the environment. So situationally, where you are in the US and on what trail you are, it could be adaptable. Absolutely love cowboy camping, but there is something very cozy to me about crawling in my tent at the end of the day and zipping it up and knowing that I am safe in my little cocoon.
Right. Hey, are there any overnight or multi-day trails in Hawaii?
On the island of Kauai, yes, there is the Kalau Trail, which before I left for the PCT, went out and did. It's 22 miles out and back on the coast. It hugs the coast, which is pretty beautiful. And I definitely do recommend that to people who are going to go on a long hike, to go out there and test your gear, see how you adapt, see how it is when it's raining and you're at mile 6 and you still have 5 miles to go. And just kind of check in with yourself mentally. So I did fly to the island of Kauai and do the Kalau Trail and test out my gear. Hard to compare the island of Hawaii to then moving to go to the PCT, but it was a good exercise to prepare me mentally.
That's right. Got to test that gear. I know that there are some people out there, successful through hikers who have shown up day one. This is the first time they've ever packed their pack or carried their pack fully loaded, and they've never actually used any of the gear yet. But those are a rare breed, I would say. I mean, you should. Those are the people you want to stick around
because they're going to get rid of stuff, and it might be stuff you need.
Nice. Now, when you're out on the trail, I mean, being concerned with pack weight, I mean, do you take other people's discards? I mean, I think People ask me, don't people steal stuff out there? I'm like, no, people don't steal stuff. That's just more stuff to carry, and that's more weight.
Beautiful world, the through hiking world. I was super obsessed before I did my first through hike in 2015 on the PCT of like getting my gear down. And I had gone through it dozens of times. And even by the night before I get on trail, I'd stayed with Scout and Frodo, popular trail angels. And they gave me a pack shakedown. There was 2 or 3 things I like hid. And I was like, I don't want them to take it away. But within the first like 200 miles, I dropped like 7 pounds of weight. So you can obsess over it all you want, but until you're actually out there and using stuff and not using stuff, you kind of learn as you go. So don't be embarrassed to show up with a bunch and just be like, hey, I am humbled. I don't need 5 of this and 10 of this. It's sort of like if you're not going to use it in the next 10 miles, you can get it later on down the way. And so you carry your fears. And if you have a lot of fears, you're going to carry all of them. But if you're going to also, you know, learn over time to trust the trail and trust that you will be provided for and have the resources that you will need.
I love that. That is so articulate the way you said that. You carry your fears. And once you've been out for a while, you realize you don't have to be that scared. And so
you adapt.
Yeah. But have you ever seen other hikers, pick up some of the discarded gear, or maybe they swap it out if what is there is better than what they're carrying, of course.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of hiker boxes. You know, when you get to towns where there's hostels or hotels or restaurants or post offices where you can leave food or gear and then take it. And it's really nice, like I said, talking about that community again, because I can drop, you know, brand new sun gloves that I've only worn once in 300 miles of the desert, but there's a lighter skin female who's going to want that or need those sun gloves, and she's getting blisters on her hands. So it's a really beautiful relationship of leaving gear for people in those boxes or food. You know, sometimes people would send themselves boxes of food every week on trail. And so halfway through the trail, I'd want to follow those people into the post office because they're going to dump all the good stuff that I haven't had every week, but they're sick of eating. So it's, you kind of learn as you go. And you're like, hey, you want me to take it off your hands? Would you like this? And it's kind of like you barter and trade a bit, and it kind of takes us back to the old days.
Yeah. What is the best thing to look out for in terms of identifying those types of people? Do they have a certain way about them? Any telltale signs where you can say, you know what, I might be able to pick something up here?
Yeah, it's like the day you're going into town, like 5 days, and they still have Snicker bars, and they still have like mountain houses, and they still have the good food left. And I've just got like a pack of ramen and trail mix, and I'm like, how do you still have the good? Oh, you're getting another package. Oh, you don't like those Snickers anymore? How about, you know what? Let's go to town. Maybe we'll grab a burger after we hit up that post office.
Nice. And you mentioned Scout and Frodo, famous trail angels who used to do so much. I think they've retired officially now, but they used to do so much for especially first time PCT hikers. I had Scout on the podcast during season 2, just outstanding. Awesome. Did you read his book, Journeys North?
I did read his book. I stayed with them the night before I did my trail. And then in 2017, I had just reached Vermont going north on the Appalachian Trail, and he was southbounding. And we had this interaction, and I was brought to tears. And such a beautiful thing. I mean, they've helped thousands and thousands of people. But just that, you know, it's 2 years later, I'm on a different trail on the different side of the United States. And it just felt like seeing an old friend or like seeing my dad again or something. And gave him a nice warm hug. And he gave me one piece of advice, and I listened to it. And I was so proud of it. He said, you know, you're doing your second trail now. He said, you need to go do the CDT before it changes, you know, before it becomes really popular and before all the pieces are connected, and it's going to be different. So you got to go claim it. And so 2 years later, I followed his advice. But wow. Very thankful for them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I can't wait to hear your impressions about the CDT because it is so different than the other two. So we'll get there in just a bit. Back to the hiking pole. When it comes to your sleep system, are you sleeping bag or do you prefer a quilt?
Sleeping bag.
Okay.
I've had 2 20-degree Z-Packs down sleeping bags, and I still use mine from the CDT. So it lasts. And I've only had 2 of their bags over 9,000 miles of hiking. And other than some duct tape, I haven't had any issues. I mean, it's definitely brown when I put it in water in my in my bathtub afterwards. I have to give it a couple washes, but I stay pretty warm, and I have no reason to get anything else.
Well, I'll tell you what, if it's not brown when you put it in the bathtub after your hike, you're not doing it right.
Exactly.
Right? That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, Z-Packs, I mean, they are pretty highly regarded. I think at least once in every episode, I've got a guest who mentions something with Z-Packs. Did you ever watch Highline?
Yes.
Did you see that documentary?
Yes.
I didn't realize until afterwards, because they didn't mention it in the actual documentary. They made reference to one of the guys. I think was it Joe, one of the guys who had an outdoor equipment company, but they never mentioned it by name. I interviewed Benny Braden on an episode, and I asked him. I said, what is the company? Because I was curious, and he let me know that it was Z-Packs. That Joe is actually the founder of Z-Packs. So that's very interesting. And I probably should have been able to draw that conclusion, because throughout the documentary, all their tents are Z-Packs, right? So
it's quality for the price point. And I was very intimidated by the ultralight community when I first started through hiking. Like, why do I want to spend over $300 on a sleeping bag? Mm-hmm. But you got to trust all the reviews and the material, and it never let me down. And so I stand behind a product if it serves me well and is reliable. And if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it.
That's right. That's right. All right. Question number, where are we? 5. When it comes to food, stove, cold soak, or stoveless?
I'm a stove girl.
Okay.
Through and through. I get way too cold. Had hypothermia for the first time in the Sierra. So there's a saving grace for me in heating up some warm food at the end of a very cold and long, rainy, snowy day.
Do you have a favorite meal?
Well, I've never gotten sick of ramen after all these miles, but it's rice sides like cheddar broccoli, Spanish rice, chicken rice. I could eat rice all day.
Yeah. You can't go wrong with rice and ramen. I mean, there are some items where I have, I've not done a long trail like any of the Triple Crowners out there, but been out there for 10 plus days, and there have been some food items that I don't care to look at again because I just overdid it. But ramen and rice, never. I mean, those are solid. All right. Question number 6. Is life better above or below the tree line?
Depends on what day you're asking me.
Oh, this is not 100% answer.
Nope. Depends on what the clouds are doing. I've had a lot of scares above tree line in lightning storms, specifically on the Colorado Trail, and then on the Continental Divide Trail, where I'm just like praying to see trees again, dodging lightning. I don't know. Depends on the day. When I'm below tree line, I just want to be above it. But when I'm above it, I want to stay and then eventually get back down and feel safe again. So yeah, not 100% answer for me.
Interesting. Okay. All right. We got her to waffle on something. Nice. All right. Question number 7, last question in the poll. What's more important, pack weight or luxury items?
Pack weight.
And what was your base weight when was your first trail the PCT?
My first trail was the PCT. I don't know what my base weight was. It was probably a lot heavier than I wanted it to be. But my base weight for my last of my Triple Crown trails on the Continental Divide was 11, maybe 12 pounds. So I say pack weight is more important, but for me, my luxury items are usually food related, so that weight doesn't really stay.
Okay, and so tell me about your luxury food items.
I like the whole cheesecake sometimes, pies. I love to eat, and my resupply strategy is if I'm going to put my food into my hand in my food bag, and it's a long day, and I still have like 12 miles for the day, if I'm going to pull something out of my food bag, is it going to make me happy or sad? Chances are, if it's a Cliff Bar, it's not going to make me happy. But if it's like a little cake or a pie, it's probably going to make me happy. And give me endorphins to get back up the next mountain.
Yeah, let's talk about Cliff Bars. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Cliff Bars. They're high density, good source of calories, but man, they're not a whole lot of fun to eat.
I mean, I've been out of food like once or twice, like almost completely of my food on trail, and strangers have given me snacks. I remember one time being given a peanut butter Cliff Bar and being like, I would rather do anything other than eat this. But when I ate it, it was like the most satisfying. So I think it depends on your mental state and how willing you are to trick your mind into sustenance.
Yeah, my jaw always hurts when I eat Cliff Bars.
Yeah.
Or other protein bars. I mean, it's just a lot of work.
Protein bars on trail just don't cut it for me.
Yeah.
I'd rather eat jerky all day long.
Reaching into the bag and pulling out a whole cheesecake. I mean, that is a strategy I could go with.
I just put it into a gallon Ziploc and I would just lay in my sleeping bag in the morning and I just spoon feed myself cheesecake, and I stand by it. It's a quality trail breakfast.
Luxury.
Pop-Tarts just crumble, but cheesecake, that satisfies.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts. Speaking of foods that I don't go back to very often anymore because I got sick of them on the trail, Pop-Tarts is another one.
And I make that face because now my diet has nothing to do with trail food at all. Even looking back on what I've ate over the years, I'm like, I can't believe I put that poison into my body. But at the same time, it fueled me efficiently to do 30-plus mile days, so can't complain. It's two evils.
Before I add up the score here, what is your, as an endurance runner now, what is your source of food? What are you putting in? What's your fuel?
Well, now it's a lot of protein because I'm functionally training as well. So I do a lot of training in the gym with functional strength training and conditioning, a lot of oatmeal, a lot of cleaner carbs rather than processed carbs. It's a lot more fruit. Like I said, the biggest game changer for me has been the protein to build the muscle to sustain for longer, and cleaner sources of the protein, not just protein bars and protein shakes, more meat, higher quality meat, better sources of dairy. So I think cleaning up my diet has really helped me focus in more on the sport of this and doing it more intentionally.
They said better sources of meat and better sources of dairy. What, I'm just thinking of, cows. I mean, what are the better sources?
Organic grass-fed, which we will segue into more when we talk about the homestead. Just knowing the sources of how your meat was raised, regenerative farming, just how are they feeding these animals? What are the conditions that the animals are raised in? I feel like definitely goes hand in hand with the intention behind why you're consuming the meat and paying for what you get. It's going to be higher in cost, but I feel like it's more sustainable energy, cleaner energy.
Got it. Okay, Hawaii, I've got to do some math here. I need to put your answers through the John freaking Muir algorithm to come up with a score, a sanity score. I've got to, let's see, I got to carry the 3. We're going to divide by √2, multiply by pi, and we're going to adjust for the atmospheric pressure at the top of Mount Haleakala on Maui. And I come up with a score of 63.
Oh, that's higher than I thought.
That's pretty sane. Those are high marks.
Okay.
I can't remember the last time I gave a score out above 60. So
wow,
that's a badge of honor.
I think I've been out off the trail for too long.
That could be. You're a little far removed from the trail. That's why you're so sane. Okay. Hey, Hawaii, before we get too far down the trail, let's back up a little bit. Let's hear about that background. You mentioned Florida. You mentioned Hawaii. Let's talk about where you grew up, what kinds of sports and hobbies you played, and how did you get involved in the through hiking cult?
It is a cult.
It is a cult. I mean, any organization that convinces you to sleep in the dirt for months on end, that's got to be a cult, right?
And then you become addicted to it and tell everybody
That's
about
right.
it. Right. I was born and raised in South Florida, one of many children. Surprisingly, did no sports or activities.
Wait, hang on. I can't let that pass. One of many children. I've
one of 5.
One of 5. Okay, 5. Got it.
Never, like I said, did any organized sports. I was diagnosed with scoliosis, which is a big curvature of the spine, when I was about 14. And by the time I was 15, underwent a full spinal fusion of my spine. Got about 4 inches taller from surgery, but it definitely set me back as far as what I perceived possible for myself. I didn't go after any sports, or I was not very active at all until I moved to Hawaii, and had been divorced, young 20s. And so that is when I became very obsessed with the hiking trails, because A, it was free, and B, there was tons of hiking trails around me. And as soon as you got to the top of the trails in Hawaii, you had a 360 view of the whole island. And if it was a clear day, you could see the other islands. So I quickly became fascinated with just the reality of I can get off work and then just go climb a mountain with my friends at the end of the day and watch sunset. So it became a very exciting thing for me. And at that time, I started to realize that, oh, maybe my back surgery and what the doctors had told me was a limitation was just my perceived limitation. And so over the years, I started hiking more and more and more, and feeling really confident and inspired, and started seeing this through hiking thing presented to me in social media, and had really piqued my interest to sort of better myself and be this thing of like, I've never pushed myself that hard, and seen if I was capable of it. So it kind of planted a seed in me, and I just started researching it and realized this is what I was going to do. And I have had no back pain since my back surgery. And well, now it's like almost 18 years ago. And so I wanted to see if the limitations were real, or if I was capable of something. And so I told everybody I needed to just go do this hike and see if I could do it, see if I could accomplish it. But it turns out when I finished, it's all I wanted to do. So once I finished the PCT, I went back to Hawaii, and I couldn't sit still. I took a job in Africa, and then I took a job in Oregon, and I just started traveling a bunch to save more money to go back onto another trail, and then another trail, and then another trail, and another trail. So it was a small seed that was planted that became an idea for me to push myself and see if it was possible for me having a full spinal fusion. And then once I realized it was possible, I just kind of wanted to keep pushing that envelope a little bit.
Wow, what a story! And I have some follow-up questions for you. First of all, to our listeners out there, to anybody who maybe is not a thru hiker, who has no maybe belief in themselves that they can actually do a thru hike like the AT or the PCT. Listen to Hawaii's story here, that she was a young lady who really did not participate in a whole lot of organized sports or activities like that, who had scoliosis, who had surgery. And as a result of that, spinal fusion surgery grew. I mean, that's just mind blowing. Grew 4 inches as a result of that surgery. And now, not only is she a hiker, but she hiked all 3 of the American Long Trails. That's just inspiring. And so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Question though, how did you go from a 22-mile out and back to then, 2,600 miles from Mexico to Canada?
I was kind of bored with my life, to be honest. And I was living in Hawaii. It wasn't like my life was bad. I was doing what I loved. I was teaching, and then I became a nanny, and I had a great circle of friends. I lived on an island, had a great lifestyle. It kind of went a little deeper. I feel like I kind of was searching to go deeper within myself. And there had been things from my divorce and from my marriage and that life that I'd lived that, when we experience a lot of heavy emotions, we tend to stuff them down and just move on, because we got to be an adult and deal with life and process and continue on. No one's going to take care of us. My family was far away. I had to figure it out for myself. And so I think what happened when I planted the seed within myself of the PCT, it became this, I need to go deeper within myself and sit with myself And the quiet and the isolation from the distractions really did that for me. And so it was never like I'm going to go as far as I go and I'll be satisfied. It's like, I'm going to Canada. And I'm so glad I had that mindset, because every week to week was so different. Every month to month was so different. And the further I got, the more I changed, and the more those things came up for me, and I was able to process and deal with them in healthier ways and in more realistic ways, rather than just pushing them aside.
Yeah, many people out there on the long trails, we're doing a long hike. A lot of times they're dealing with stuff, right? They're processing stuff. They're healing from trauma. Whether, I've talked to veterans out there on the trail. I've talked to people who are coming out of divorces, difficult situations, and they are not only enjoying the physical activity, but also enjoying that alone time to be able to work through stuff.
Powerful.
Very powerful. And Hawaii, I also want you to know that as we go through an episode, I'm always on the lookout for an episode title. And right now, the two top candidates for this episode's title, I've got The Whole Cheesecake or Bored in Hawaii. So, I mean, there may be some other ones that come up, but those are two that jump out at me right now.
Just makes me want cheesecake right now.
Hey, how are you paying the bills these days? What do you do to finance your adventures?
So I'm still nannying. I've done this professionally for about 16 years. I worked with an agency called Adventure Nannies. It has placed me with high-profile families all over the world, which has been a great way to travel. But in the past couple of years, started to feel stagnant in that, especially as I reached closer to the age of wanting my own family. So I now work as a fitness coach at a local gym here in Colorado Springs called F45, functional 45-minute classes. So we have cardio days, strength days, and hybrid days, and I absolutely love it. It is an amazing gym environment. I get to coach big group fitness classes, and it's more of like a personal training approach with 30 plus people sometimes in class. So I do that, and I just started my very first backpacking bootcamp online coaching program. So I have a 6-week backpacking program where I take clients virtually, and I put them through a process every week of 3 different workouts. And then we jump on a call and we talk about nutrition and objectives and just sort of work together toward that goal of getting ready for the mountain or the trail.
Nice. And you know what, Hawaii, we just had a third candidate for the title of the episode. I'm also considering now Adventures in Nannying.
It's been a wild journey.
I guess. All right. Hey, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your Triple Crown. We're going to talk about your endurance running and some of the other things you're up to. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are talking to Sarah Dramis, aka Hawaii. I love that trail name, actually. Even if it doesn't have a good story, I mean, it's a good name. Solid. All right. So you decided, I'm going to do the PCT. Do you remember when you first learned that there was a trail that went all the way from Mexico to Canada and you could walk that trail?
Yeah, I wanted to do it. I learned there was not a lot of females that had done it. And I feel like that was the fire under my butt to be like, well, I have to do it now.
Right. I mean, did you see a movie? Did you read a book? I mean, how did you find out about the PCT?
There was a female on social media. Her name was Dora the Explorer, who happens to be one of my good friends now. I don't even know how I found her or we found one another, but she had just finished it. I want to say in 2013 or 14. And she was also a nanny like me. And her experience, we just seem really similar in our views and our process and our beliefs. And following her journey, it felt like I was almost there with her. And just the way that this community works, I reached out to her and she was like, you can absolutely do this. And it felt very real when somebody who I looked up to and was inspired by was like, hey, here's the baton. It's your turn. You can do it. So it planted the seed. Again, I say that a lot, but a lot of times things come into our lives and we water them or we just like let them go. So when the seed plants and you really commit to it, it can flourish and grow. And so she finished the trail, and then I was like, well, if somebody I know can do it, there's no reason I can't.
That's right. And you know what? I like the idea of planting the seed, because I think an undertaking as big as that, I mean, it's not just something that you jump into after having thought about it for a week. I mean, this is oftentimes I'm talking to people who have thought about this for years, sometimes decades, before saying, you know what, I'm going to do it. It kind of gets into their brain and wriggles around and burrows in there and really just kind of eats away at them until they are ready to go out there and do it. And so she planted the seed for you. You're planting the seed for others. I'm hoping that, this podcast is doing that for others as well, that they hear from enough people and they see people from all different walks of life are able to do things like this, that maybe they'll get inspired to go out and do it themselves.
Oh, it could be so intimidating as well. The amount of planning and preparation and sacrifices also. You're walking away from jobs, you're walking away from families, you're walking away from friends, and this comfort that we work so hard to create our own comforts. So then when you're just choosing to just walk away from it and create your own comfort in the risky, uncomfortable perspective world is a very dangerous concept to some people. So once you commit to it and you start planning and prepping and making those sacrifices, it sort of hardens you a little bit to being like, no, this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. And what you speak into existence then becomes your reality. After all that time of planning and preparing and getting the right gear and getting the logistics ready, you arrive to it at the time that I feel like we're ready.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about being uncomfortable, Sarah. I mean, is there any value in learning how to be uncomfortable? Is there any transferability into, civilized life, having that skill?
Absolutely. I pride myself in feeling like that's how I try to live my life now. I'd only slept in a tent or outside maybe a handful of times before I decided to do the PCT. And I started that trail by myself with every intention of spending every night by myself in a place I'd never been. And there's so much that you learn in that time frame on a day-to-day basis of using what you're carrying and trusting that what you're carrying is enough, that you just learn so much from your environment, in your own adaptability, in what you're mentally capable of, physically capable of. And so when you take that experience and then come back into, call it the fake world, this world, where you're not on trail, I often find that if you're not living that life of being uncomfortable in whatever you're doing, if I'm not being uncomfortable coaching, I'm not being a good coach. I need to be talking to new people that come in that are new to the gym environment. I need to be pushing members to lift heavier, to push themselves harder when they're doing the push-ups, and to go faster. And so I feel like whatever it is we're doing, if we're not pushing that edge of uncomfortable, we're not trying enough. Because just going through the motions, it doesn't get us to that next place where we really succeed and learn the most that we can.
Yeah, I used to make the mistake of asking my guests about when they come back into the real world. And I realized that this is not the real world. I mean, we live in a very artificial world. And so the real world is when you're actually out there on the trail and you're out there being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I like the way you put that, though. There's a lot of transference from those skills out in the real world and coming back and using that to your advantage here in the artificial world. Now, there's a very nice symmetry to your Triple Crown. You have the PCT in 2015, the AT in 2017, and the CDT in 2019, 2 years apart. That's a nice bit of planning there.
I thought when I was going to do the PCT, I was just going to be done, but something got a little unhinged. I think it was just really finding the money. I'll do it again. Had a nice little teaser. I did the Colorado Trail in 2016 in between the AT and the PC and the AT. But I think spacing it like that was pretty good because I was away from the trail long enough to arrive to it with the honor it deserved.
Let's ask a couple questions there. When did you realize on the PCT that, you know what, I am doing more than the PCT? This is not it. This is just the start.
I think it was once I hit the Washington border, my last 500 miles. I was about 2,000 miles in, and it started to just suck. It was raining and snowing and like 20 degrees, and everything was soaking wet. My sleeping bag was soaking wet. There was fire closures. People were getting off trail because of time constraints. Everything had just gone downhill. And there was nothing about me that was like ready to throw in the towel. I was more just like sad that it was ending soon. And for me to be in like the tornado, like the hardest part of the trail, like I just had the glory and the high of making through all through California and the desert, and then fighting through the Sierra, my first time in the snow, and then the beauty of Oregon. I think by the time I hit Washington, I realized it was almost over. I was like, this can't be almost over. And once you make up your mind about that, then you meet people who live in Colorado or have done the AT. So as soon as you kind of sink your mind into, I'm going to do more, then you meet people who have the stories to just help you really realize that now you want to go and see what the AT is all about. Now you want to go to Colorado.
Now, some people might look on that chain of events where it's all kind of falling apart at the end, and they might take that as a sign from the world that, you know what, get off trail. But not you. You kind of opened yourself up for other possibilities. And I like that notion that there's a synchronicity that when you start thinking about something, then all of a sudden it pops up in some form near you. You think that's because just your mind is more open to it at that point, or is there some kind of I don't know, existential issue here?
You know, I've had a lot of time to think about that because it seems to be a reoccurring thing I tell people. I did get a hitchhike one time in just outside the Sierra on the PCT, and it was this couple, and they told me about the concept of pro-anoia, where it's the opposite of paranoia, where everything and everybody's against you. It's like where you're conspiring to believe that the world is there for you, or all these events are conspiring for you, which can sound a little tree huggery. I get it. But on trail, you don't have distractions. Most of the time, you don't have cell service. You don't have your mom calling you or your friend calling you. You don't have to worry about your bills. You don't have to worry about your job or your apartment or all these other things, your car. Because you have such limited distractions, I feel like your thoughts, whatever direction they go to, it's more magnified and you have more intention behind it. You know, when you're just thinking logistically, I have 86 miles and to get to the next town, I only have this much food. You're honed in on like what you can eat and when you can eat to help you get to where you're going. So I feel like the lack of distractions really help whatever your mind is on to fully be on it and present.
Got it. Now, have you heard of the concept type 2 fun?
Yes.
So those are the things for our listeners out there who are maybe not familiar with type 2 fun. These are the things that they're not fun when they're happening, but you have a whole lot of fun talking about it to other people after the fact. So when you think of the PCT, what jumps out? What jumps out at you? Any type 2 fun or any special memories that immediately jump to mind?
I would definitely say water crossings in the Sierra after a cold winter. It's like 6 a.m. and you've got a giant river or like melted glacier water to cross, and it is freezing and it is moving very swift and very fast. So you're unclipping your pack, you're taking your shoes off, you're tying to the top, you're making sure all your stuff in your pack is in a giant dry bag, you're making sure your phone is in a Ziploc bag, and there is a very definite chance that if you are going to go cross that water source, you can be ripped downstream, and who knows who would find you. So I think I would definitely categorize the PCT type 2 fun, Sierra water crossings, terrified. The adrenaline really fuels you to get some miles done, I'll tell you what.
That'll wake you up in the morning, that ice cold water. And to share with people, why do you unclip your pack when you're doing water crossings?
If you leave the pack clipped to you, if you are God forbid, taken downstream, your footing goes under you, which has happened to me. Your pack is just going to pull you down heavier and you can get lodged to something. By not having your pack, you're not confined to that weight, and that especially your pack is already heavy, but if you added water to it, you're going to have more chances to get pinned to something or snagged on something, which could then lead to drowning or whatnot. So having your hands free, it is just a pack. I'd rather lose my pack than lose my life. And so if I'm swept downstream without that, I have more chances of using my hands to crawl out or to pull myself from what I'm caught into.
Why, that's almost a pro tip right there. That's good stuff. And I wish my friends would have told me this when I was out hiking on the JMT my first time back in 2015. Nothing happened. I did all the river crossings and it was fine. But then I think maybe after one of our last river crossings, I turn around and there's my buddy that I'm hiking with, who he's got his stuff unclipped. I'm like, hey, why is your stuff unclipped? And then he told me, oh yeah, you do that so you don't drown. I'm like, well, hey, thanks for the insight ahead of time.
No one told me either. I saw somebody else doing it. So
right.
You kind of fake it till you make it a little bit on trail, because you're like, oh yeah, totally. Like I slept in my tent the wrong way for the first 800 miles of the PCT. So sometimes you just make these mistakes. You got to go with it.
How do you sleep in your tent the wrong way?
And it was a fair question. Okay, it was one of those long single wall tents. It's higher on one side, the entry side, and lower on the end. And I thought I was supposed to crawl into it, and I had my head at the little end. And somebody, Bison was his name, he walked by and said, hey, Hawaii, like, how are you going to get out of that tent if there's a fire? And I was like, oh, it just clicked on me. I would have to turn around, and I always wondered why my tent was like right there in my face. So I learned my lesson.
There you go. Only 800 miles. That's nice.
Only 800 miles.
Now, PCT and AT, two very different trails, very different personalities. What do you remember from your time on the AT? What were the big differences?
Not as many views as the PCT. PCT is like, it's like Candy Lane. You start in the desert, and then you earn the Sierra Mountain Range, and then you have the highland of Northern California. It was always something different. You had to earn your way. AT was just like a green tunnel, as everyone says. But there's definitely something to the 14 states. And the demographic of it all was very different. It was surprising, too. Like New Jersey, surprisingly, one of the most beautiful places on the trail. Saw so many bears. It was stunning. And then kind of earn the whites in New Hampshire and the finish. So very big differences. I got really pale on the AT. On the PCT, I got sunburn on my ears. So it's just very different exposures. You're not as high up, but comparatively, the AT physically, a lot more demanding. It's just constant up and downs. There's a lot more, because the PCT is graded for pack animals. You have much slower, swift switchbacks going up the mountain. Whereas the AT, it's like, you're there. So definitely different terrain, but in different ways. I love them both in different ways. There's no comparison, really.
Right. Now, talk about, you mentioned 14 states. What is the effect on your psyche when you do a trail with 14 states versus a trail that only has 3 states, like the PCT?
It's a lot more exciting. It took me 3 months to get through California on the PCT. But the third or fourth state on the Appalachian Trail is Virginia, and they call it the Virginia Blues, which rightfully so, because it's like 500 miles long and it rained almost every single day. And the morale was really low. And because the AT is so accessible to towns, one of the longest conservation projects in the world, everybody can get to the trail. So it's really easy to quit or get off or jump off. Or a lot of people in the AT have friends and family coming or whatnot. Whereas the PCT, you're so remote that you're in it longer. Like you're in the remoteness longer, where you feel more wild. On the AT, because there's more states and more accessibility, it felt like I wasn't truly far removed unless it was like these longer stints, and it still felt accessible. So even though there were more states on the AT, the PCT had this different appeal because you truly, in my mind, did feel so much more detached from everything.
That's interesting. I've never heard it put that way before. We've never talked about that on the podcast before. And that, we have talked about the fact that 14 states versus 3 states. I mean, it seems like you're in California forever. I mean, it's just it could be demoralizing that you've been hiking for more than a month, maybe more than 2 months, depending on your speed, maybe more than 3 months, and you're still in California. Yeah, you're always there. But this fact about the AT being so close to different towns, so many towns are trail adjacent, and there's that ease of saying, you know what, I'm done, I'm just getting off. It's really easy for me to leave the trail at many points. But on the PCT, you're right, it's remote, and so you don't have that luxury of, well, I can just jump off, I just bail out right here, because there's not as many bailout points. I'd never thought about that before. That's an excellent point.
I slept in more public restrooms on the PCT than on the AT. I slept in more hotels and hostels. So comparatively, you gotta make do with what you got.
Well, you know what? If you've slept in public restrooms, you need to contact Matador at outinthewild.life and get your hiker trash hat, because that was IB Tat. That was his qualifying characteristic. In order to get a hat, you couldn't just pay for the hat. You had to sleep in a public restroom somewhere. So you qualified.
Many of my day.
Nice. Any type 2 fun, and judging from the fact that you slept in a public restroom many times, any type 2 fun on the AT?
The whites, going through the whites, going through New Hampshire. I say type 2 fun because it was like a sea of fog. I couldn't see much, and the wind was howling, and the weather just seemed like it was 100% or nothing. And I didn't expect it from the AT. I mean, I had all that rain in Virginia, but it seemed to be like the obstacles in the AT were like mental obstacles of being in the green tunnel and still being in the same state, or just not feeling like you're seeing the views. But the whites, the type 2 fun was like New Hampshire was getting through like the Mahoosic Notch in a rainstorm. It was getting up and over boulders that were really sketchy, and my shoes had just been tattered at the point. So I think the type 2 fun was just hitting this section of the AT I wasn't prepared for, because I thought it would just been a walk in the park, and all of a sudden the trail was like, oh hey, I'm gonna wake you up with terrible weather, and you're being on giant boulders and you can't see anything. And I wasn't using, I don't think, gut hooks at the time, far out guides now, so I was using the old trail maps. So it's a lot easier to get lost when you don't have like a little navigational beacon. So it wasn't as intense type 2 fun in this explanation, but if you were there, you would totally understand.
Got it. Now, a lot of similarities, a lot of differences, but a lot of similarities between the PCT and the AT, in that very well-established trails. I'm curious, when you got to the CDT in 2019, is that a totally different animal, or were you knew what to expect and you got there and it was exactly as you had prepared for?
The CDT, if you've done a through hike, if you've done the AT or the PCT, the CDT is like the wild ant that when she's around, you're like, oh, where the hell did you come from? It's a little bit of the PCT, a little bit of the AT, just maximized. It is the holy grail of through hikes.
We all have that wild ant, and she usually shows up around the holidays.
And you don't know what to expect, and you think you have an idea, but then when you think you have an idea, it just throws you for a loop. CDT, because it's so unfinished and it's so remote, it is like a choose your own adventure of through hikes. The desert portion, all my through hikes I've done northbound. The desert portion is wildly remote. I mean, you have to get a special 4x4 vehicle to get to the trailhead, and there's border patrol, and there's helicopters, and there's border patrol telling you about these snakes they'll bite you, they'll kill you because there's no antivenom for them. So going through the desert of the CDT, it requires water caches, and that is something that on the PCT you don't have to worry about. And the AT, you're spoiled. You have springs everywhere. So immediately off the bat on the CDT, you don't have a guaranteed water source, and you have 27-mile water carries. So the remoteness and the reality of the start really sets the foundation. It sets the stage for what you're going to get yourself into.
Now, when we talked about the PCT and the AT, and we talked about type 2 fun, you're very specific in your answers on type 2 fun. It was the High Sierra River crossings, and it was the White Mountains. When I talk to you about type 2 fun on the CDT, what comes to mind?
Colorado, the place I moved to. the type 2 fun that convinced me to move my life here and start again. In 2019, when I did the CDT, I did not realize this, but I did it in a 1,000% above average snow year in Colorado. Now remember, I'd never seen snow until I got on the PCT. So hiking snow, navigating snow, layering myself for snow, any knowledge about snow I learned from other hikers on trail or from my experience. So by the time I got to, it actually started snowing in New Mexico before we got to the border to Colorado. There was a couple feet of snow at the border to Colorado. It was around Memorial Day weekend. I had to order snowshoes for the first time. Never used snowshoes before. How to learn carrying snowshoes, how to learn how to micro spikes. Type 2 fun was the entire state of Colorado. At that point, there was probably 12 other hikers for the season ahead of me. And sometimes those hikers were getting lost. They were getting off trail. They're getting back on trail. They were going around. I heard all these horror stories. So I kind of grouped up with a few people. And that type 2 fun was just surviving every day. The trail was covered in so much snow. And then in the afternoon, you would get sun cups from the sun beating down on the trail. So you'd go take a step and you'd just go waist deep. I'd lose my snowshoes. It would be going over passes, over cornices. So you got that big shelf of snow and you got to get up the mountain. Or you think for hours you're following hiker footprints, but it ends up being an animal track. It was terrifying. I mean, every day it was so helpful to be with other hikers because it wasn't just me trying to come up with a plan and a navigational plan. It was extremely tiring to make miles. I'm talking 15 to 20 miles. And it was hard because up until that point in the desert, I was averaging 25 to 35 miles. So mentally it was draining. And also it was like every day it was like, am I going to die? It wasn't just like smooth sailing. It was like the snow was a huge obstacle. And I even took a week off at the time and went to go visit somebody and came back. But there was no more stalling. Like I needed to just keep going. I always say on trail, 90% of your problems can be solved by just continuing to move. Even if you're inching, even if I'm making 15 miles a day, I'm still moving north to Canada. So it was the mental aspect of going 6 miles in the wrong direction or just falling or getting sun blindness in my eyes from staring at the snow blindness. Every day it was something new. And it wasn't like it was just something new. It was like I was learning a whole new world that I had no experience in. So it just made it that more emotionally exhausting as well.
Got it. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then once that was done, then there were grizzly bears in Idaho and Wyoming, Montana. So it just never ended. The whole CDT was type 2 fun.
So very specific on the PCT and the AT. The CDT, the entire thing was type 2. Nice. Any grizzly bear encounters?
21.
21. Wow.
21. And my very last day of the CDT, 12 miles from the border, there was a mama grizzly bear and her 3 cubs eating berries. It got as close to me as like 2 feet. So it was terrifying. I mean, looking back, I'm like, what a precious experience. I got to see these grizzly bears. But at the same time, like I was too exhausted at night to be fearful because you're just so tired. You could lay there and be like, oh, there's bears, but you're just so tired. You don't really think about it. But looking back now, like, dang, I was real brave because if my mom saw what I was doing, she'd probably be terrified.
You were either brave or just completely exhausted.
Exhausted and a little bit insane. I think it's a mixture of all of it.
Yeah, your score just went down a little bit. You're down in the 50s. So, yeah. Hey, let's switch gears because I know that you have pivoted from through hiking to now doing endurance running. How did that happen?
The pandemic. I got done with the CDT, my Triple Crown, in 2019 and went back to California for one of my jobs. And I got back there and it's a weird feeling when you finish the long trails because it feels like part of you has died, but part of you is newly alive. But I was still searching for that high of miles of distance and getting my mind in that through hiking zone. And then by the next year, everything shut down. So I couldn't go travel to these national parks or backpack. Everything was closed, but I could run. So I taught myself to run, and that's sort of how I dealt with losing my job at the time and not being able to travel to see my family and my friends. And it sort of became my antidepressant and really helped me move through my post-trail anxiety. And I just became obsessed with it. So I moved to Colorado a year ago to live in the mountains where I could train year round. And for the past year have been doing a handful of races, which has felt like a nice expression of those 2 years of training on my own.
Do you think that there is an obsessive personality trait for people who are maybe triple crowners or endurance athletes? I mean, do you go like whole hog into something, just become obsessed with it and go deep dive down the rabbit hole?
I think our blood is different than other people's after a while. Yeah, absolutely. But but knowing that feels like a superpower. It feels like I have no excuses to like be anxious or be in a dark place with myself or be depressed because I know my anti-drug. Like I know the thing that makes me feel like superhuman is that I can keep going I'm not a fast runner. I run 10, 11, 12-minute miles, but I run and it makes me feel, it gives me so much clarity. And so the PCT, all the trails unlock something for me that no one can ever take away from me. And it now gets to equip me to live the rest of my life with those principles.
Hawaii, is it a fair comment to say that through hikers, when they finish a through hike, just like runners, when they finish a run, that they're thinking about the next hike or the next run? I mean, you're already planning in your mind when you're going to do that again. It's not, you can't just rest and not think about it for a while. It's an obsession.
It's always there. It never goes away.
That's right. And what distance races are you running?
So I've done a 50K. I did a 25K. This year I did the David Goggins 4x4x48. Have you heard of that?
I have. That's impressive.
Very intense. Especially running. I mean, I did a midnight run, a couple midnight runs. And I don't live in a bad neighborhood. I live in Colorado Springs by Garden of the Gods, but people do weird things at midnight running through a neighborhood. There's a man painting his fence. There was a goldfish deal going down. I don't know. It was very odd, but it was a lot of fun. I liked having that commitment. It was a fun challenge. I think I might do it again next year.
I was thinking about doing the 1x1x24. It's a thing. It's a thing.
It is a thing.
Yeah, it's 1 mile every hour for 24 hours.
Oh,
so I mean, you're doing 24 miles in a 24-hour period, and there's there's the midnight and the 1 a.m. and the 2 a.m. runs, of course. So,
that's another thing. I learning to run in the pandemic. I created my own races. So training myself, I would print my own bib out and do a marathon, or print my own bib out and do something. And I loved it because I could use my car as an aid station. I can use my house as an aid station and didn't have to pay for any race entries. So it kind of became my thing. So to be at races now, this past year, I've done 5 or 6 races. It's a whole different sport because I'm used to just doing it on my own. But at the same time, it's the challenge of it that makes it fun.
That's right. The streets of Colorado Springs are free. There's no gym membership. All right. Now let's I don't want to miss out on this opportunity to talk to you about your next big adventure coming up, and that is homesteading. Tell us about homesteading and what this is all about.
So my boyfriend and I have 15 acres, just about an hour outside of town. The 15 acres sit at just about 10,000 feet, so it's a little higher in elevation than where I currently am. And we are building a cabin. We are building a homestead. We've got a giant meadow where we will be raising our own animals, pasture-raised pigs, and we'll have some dairy cows and chickens and goats. We'll be raising our own food, and because we have that giant meadow where the sun hits and it's so high up, we'll be able to grow fruits and vegetables. And the idea of the homestead is to create something that we can share within the community, provide food not only for ourselves, but people within that mountain community, and create just a barter system, a share with it all, and to be able to live sustainably, growing our own food. And now that we are expecting a child, it is making it a little more exciting to know that by the time this child does enter the world in the summer, it will only know living on a mountain life, and everything it eats will be what we grow. And so the concept of that is just really exciting, because it's like my life is now going to shift to a permanent through hike.
How exciting, and congratulations on the
Thank
child.
you.
When's the due date?
June 20th.
Okay, June 20th. And still too early to know if it's a boy or a girl, or you prefer not to know?
Ultrasound today, just set the genetic blood test off, so we should find in a couple weeks.
Okay. All right.
But
that's awesome. Now, had you done much research on homesteading prior to embarking upon this adventure?
My research was being a thru hiker. So this has been my boyfriend's dream for quite some time. He was in the Army and has been here for quite some time. And when he got out, this is just a dream that he's had with his own children. He's got a 10 and a 12-year-old. And it's funny how, your dreams, everything sort of comes together when you're in the right place and with the right person. So this dream has manifested within both of us now. And it sort of makes me feel like everything I've done up until this point in my life, it all makes sense. Like all my experience feeling comfortable in the wilderness and being around animals is like, because I was meant to like raise animals and raise and grow my own food and to raise children in this environment. And my background with nannying and working with children and my degree of working with children, it's sort of like mixing everything I've done into one. So this is, I feel like, my ultimate expression of using my knowledge in the wilderness to now live in the wilderness.
Wow, how exciting. Congratulations.
Thank
I can't
you.
wait to see your social media posts and keep track of how it's going out there. And are you completely off grid?
It will be completely off grid. Yes, we're going to have some solar powered energy. The whole idea, like I said, is to be completely sustainable. So we do have a water source on the land and a spring close by. So it's all a learning effort. We're going to be a 12 by 16 cabin to start. So it already is a process of so much to learn, especially living that high if it's snowing here, it's really snowing there. So I've never had to live in snow and commute. So it's going to be an interesting experience.
What's the altitude of the cabin, of the homestead?
9,992 feet.
Wow.
So
yeah, you'll see some snow. You'll see quite a bit of snow. Wow. All right. Hey, have you heard of the Barkley Marathons?
Oh yeah.
Is that something you would think about entering?
No.
I was waiting for the 100%. 100%. Yeah.
I mean, I still got to get a 50 miler and a 100 miler. And I feel really inspired because the women in ultra running seem to be peaking in their 40s and 50s. And it's this amazing culture where I feel like the older women are, the stronger they get. And I feel like I've just dipped like my pinky toe into the pool of ultra running. And I'm so glad I've learned the skills of like going a long time, but there's still so much to learn. So much respect for those people doing it. This is an insane race.
Yeah, you're just getting started. You're just dipping your toe in right now.
Just
It's
a
a long way to go. Nice. Hey, Hawaii, you know where we are?
Huh?
Do you know where we are?
Are we on the mirror?
Well, I'm in Southern California and you're in Colorado, but
The pro tip insight of the week.
we're at that time of the episode where you get to share some trail wisdom with our listeners. So what do you have for us?
Anything, any wisdom at all?
Any wisdom at all? What piece of advice could you give us to make our next outdoor experience even better?
I'm going to say something that could be quite controversial.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people are probably going to get mad when I say this. You don't need the entire first aid kit. Were you expecting that one?
I was not expecting that one, but as somebody who goes pretty light on the first aid kit, I can empathize. So yeah, explain what you're talking about.
I just see a lot of times where you get like the hard case with like 20 bandages and like all this gel and all this anti. You don't need as much as you think you need. I duct tape around my trekking poles. Usually carry some liquid bandages. Just something to clean something out. I know it sounds like, all these things could go wrong. But again, like I said, we carry our fears and the little things add up. So take that knowledge of you don't need the whole first aid kit when it comes to everything in your pack. If you're looking to downsize and clip on trail weight, one of the easiest ways to do it is being like, do I need this? Am I going to need this in the next couple weeks? If not, if it's a probability, just carry one. Just that simple thing when it comes to all things. You don't need to carry town clothes. You need a shirt to hike in, a long sleeve to sleep in, and you're good to go. You don't need as much as you think you need. So that's my pro tip. You can go further by carrying less.
Nice. And that all started with a smaller first aid kit. I carry a pill bottle with some Advil in it, some Band-Aids, and some crazy glue. And then I've got duct tape, like you said. Duct tape will help in a lot of areas.
Yeah, duct tape and a safety pin. Usually I will carry a safety pin. I'll carry 2 pairs of socks to hike in, and I'll switch them out. And when I come by a water source, if a pair's crunchy and dirty, I'll clean it in the water source and then pin it to the outside of my pack to let it dry in the sun. But also you can clean that safety pin if you got a blister on your foot or someone does. You can tie a thread to that safety pin, push that safety pin and that thread through the blister and leave that thread in the blister and let it slowly drain. So there's a lot of multi-purposes for small pieces of gear. And that is a game changer to know what little things you can carry that can do multi things rather than carrying multiple things that only do 1 or 2 things.
That's right. And for those who are wondering out there, I only carry the clothes that I'm wearing because my goal is to, earn the title hiker trash, but also the goal is to get the clothes so stiff and worked in that they walk by themselves. It really takes the pressure off of me. So
if you're not doing your trail laundry in a trash bag at the laundromat, you're not truly living.
You're not truly hiker trash. That's right. All right. So there you have it. That's it. This episode is just about in the books. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Hawaii. Want to thank her for joining us this week. Sarah, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
I am Fearless Sarah on Instagram and Facebook. That's where you can find my backpacking program that I just released. And the homestead is Northern Hearth Homestead.
Northern Hearth Homestead. I got to write that down. I'll be following. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips you want to share with me, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com.
The Adventure Media Recommendation.
Hawaii, I'm also looking to you to share a recommendation for a book, movie, documentary, website, some kind of outdoor media that's going to keep our listeners connected to the trail in the off season. We call this our Adventure Media Recommendation. What do you have for us?
I have my friend's book he just came out with. This is Above the Ashes by my friend Kevin Conley. He is also a thru hiker. He's a wildland firefighter who biked across the country to raise funds for mental health awareness. Dear friend of mine, and this story is a great memoir of his journey, and what he's raising awareness for is quite admirable. So go ahead and give his book a follow. Kevin,
Above the Ashes.
Above the Ashes.
Kevin Connolly.
Kevin Conley.
Got it.
His handle is Backpacking Ninja.
Backcountry
Ninja. Backcountry Ninja. There you go.
Backcountry. He might have to come on the podcast and talk about his book.
He'd be a great one to have on.
Can I drop your name? Can I say that
Absolutely.
Hawaii sent me?
Absolutely.
Okay. Very good.
What have we not asked you?
And before we wrap things up, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What did we miss today?
Oh, Annapurna Circuit, Nepal. I did the Annapurna Circuit. If you are looking to travel out of the country and snag a quick 200 miles, definitely recommend the Central Himalayan Trail. It's a very inexpensive country to travel through. You don't have to sleep in a tent. Just bring your sleeping bag, and it's a beautiful country. So if you're looking to even travel on your own, I felt completely safe when I was there. It was a beautiful, great adventure.
The Annapurna Circuit. Very good. All right. Hey, that is a wrap from the John Freaking Muir studio. Great job tonight, Sarah. Any shout outs to friends and family?
All my thru hikers all over the world. I miss you guys.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care that you've been sleeping in your tent the wrong way for the past 800 miles. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.